G'day and welcome to the Hunters Campfire Podcast. My name's Mark and along with good mate Ian, we're here to help with all things hunting. If you're looking to start but don't know where to begin, you want to make the most of your next trip away or even plan that hunt of a lifetime, we've got something for you. You'll find our podcasts on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon and plenty of others. And if you want more, head over to our YouTube channel, The Hunters Campfire, where we have plenty of how-to and hunting videos along with the full video production of every podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and good hunting.
Live.
It always freezes when we go live, so I don't know if we're actually live or not. It always does that to me.
Do you know why?
No, I don't why.
Because all of a sudden it's trying to stream and upload at the same time.
Yeah, maybe that's it. It goes from
exactly
nothing to
it goes from high definition Mark and Jono to fuzzy blobs.
That's right. It goes from nothing to gigabytes of data in a minute. Okay, guys, I have a question without notice. To give it some context before I jump into it, I did a Zoom presentation to a group of hunters a couple of weeks ago, and one of the big points, and these were mostly, so these guys were mostly new hunters too. So, and we spoke about a lot of really cool stuff. And one of the points of conversation, both as a question and a following conversation, was about shot placement, i.e., you know, what's your favourite position for shot placement? And as it's been said a couple of times, my favourite position is shoot them in the head and kick them in a ditch. But if we kind of step back and be realistic for a moment, or sensible for a second, so I thought I'd put it to both of you. What is your preferred shot placement? And you can list what kind of different animals, if it's different animals and what it is. And I suppose also, what about follow-up shots? Because we copped a little bit of commentary on one of our videos about multiple shots in a buffalo. So let's talk about killing stuff with guns.
Well,
Okay.
Can I cover the buffalo thing
Start where you want. Go for it.
Yeah, look, I think I don't recall the commentary on the buffalo, but I think hunting deer and pigs versus buffalo is a very different thing. Buffalo classified as dangerous game, and whilst you might stick half a dozen shots into a buffalo, likely the first one's the kill shot, and the rest of them are just to make sure it doesn't come get you. Right. So big animal, they got big hearts, they've got big lungs. You're not collapsing them on the spot by putting one of these things through those two shoulders. You're probably shooting it in the heart, lungs type area, and it's going to take some time to fall over because they're still pumping blood. You just want to stop it. I don't think the multiple shots is to kill it. I think the multiple shots was just to get it down fast. Would be my opinion to that.
I'd agree.
Mark, what say you?
Yes. I thought about buffalo shot placement a lot, to be honest.
So have I.
And I'll tell you what I thought about most. I wish I shot that herd bull in the head on that first day. Because
the first one.
I wish I shot it in the head because I
but you
knew
lost,
I could have shot.
Lost rock, paper, scissors. There was no chance you were going to shoot that one in the head. It was mine.
Well, no, you didn't even line up on it.
No, I didn't. It wasn't a shot. But yeah.
So, because there was most definitely a headshot within.
But that's a good hindsight statement.
Yeah, it is. It is most definitely.
That was the first buffalo you squared up against.
That's right. Exactly right. So let's put it in a realist. But I've thought that, how you think about those things. That's one of the ones I've thought about. I thought it was within 50, 60 yards. I knew that thing was flying flat at 200. I knew at under 100 it was coming out at enough velocity, and that 250 grain Barnes would have just gone straight into its brain box and pushed halfway through at the back end, and it would have dropped there on the spot.
I'm not sure about that. Those skulls were pretty tough.
I reckon at that range it would have blown a hole clean through that.
So you know what we're going to do? We're going to go back to the territory in not too long. It'll be this time next year. We'll be heading back there. When we get a decent sized buffalo down, that's hard to say because we want to keep that. I was going to say, just go back 100 yards after you've done it and see what happens when you put one through its forehead.
I'd have that bullet out of that rifle. I'd have no qualms about saying that could deliver a fatal headshot right there, pole right between, just above the eyes, because they don't have a boss. They're not like a Cape Buffalo. They don't have a boss. I reckon it could have done that easy. But as you know, that's hindsight, because I didn't take that shot because I was looking at a boiler room shot and then moved its leg in the way, and that leg that was basically like a fairly decent tree trunk. I thought, I might have a hard time drilling through that bone into the boiler room, and we might be chasing that thing all over those plains, because behind it there was 50 miles of nothing. And I thought, and we didn't have a car with us, so all we could be on, we might be following this thing for 3 days. But I thought about that, and I could head shoot it. So,
I think because we're going to talk a little bit about ethics and shot placement and those sorts of things tonight. I think it's if you could test that and you were comfortable with it, sure thing. Then there's the whole other, are you good enough? Not saying you're not good enough, but there's a lot of new hunters out there that people are going out there, and do you condone headshots generally for hunters when their nerves are up? You're standing in front of a ton of animal. You've walked in the heat. You're not necessarily in the best shape after 6 hours of walking. Is the headshot going to be the most effective at that point in time? I don't know. Headshots are certainly not something I suggest that newer hunters attempt until they're super confident. They know how good they are on paper. They spend that time at the range. They're very familiar with their rifle, and they know they really know what they're doing. From
a performance point of view, there was no, because when we were at that range at Warwick, I was putting it in within 2 MOA at 200 yards. I was shooting MOA at 200 yards with those barns. They were flying that flat, so I knew the confidence was that I knew the rifle could do it, and I had this confidence in the power and the projectile. It was just that at the time it just didn't pop into my head. And I think the reason it didn't pop into my head because that was the first time I ever pointed a rifle at a buffalo, and I was kind of going, I was trying to
look at the size of this sucker.
Look through the scope and say, where's this thing? So I think that was what it did. But more headshots or neck shots. So
choice.
That kind of moves into that. So because I've moved more towards that in my the winter of my life as it is. As I've shot now for 30 plus years, I've gone more towards those kind of shots where I'd never used to do those shots.
Yeah, and I'm the same. Often having younger or newer hunters with me, I tend to go the heart lung still. I've had, and look, you know what? To be honest with you, I think I'm still there. We've changed rifles and scope and ammo combinations enough over the last little while that I haven't sat behind a single rifle long enough to be 100% confident at a headshot at distance. And it's interesting that often a headshot presents itself at close range, and if you're zeroed at 2 and you've got a close range shot, you can stuff that up just as easily.
Very easily.
Yep.
I had the opportunity on a second fallow at Nundle during the rut, and I chose to take a headshot, and I missed it. I cannot believe I missed it at the range that I was at, but that sort of dragged me back into, I'm not going to do that again, because if I've clean missed it at the distance that I was, man, I would be so devastated if I shot its jaw off. So that's just sort of brought me back. And then a couple of times now we've been to the range, and what I thought was a very well zeroed rifle was not performing like it should be. Yes, we've changed some ammo and done some bits and pieces, but you'd want to have ultimate confidence in your setup to be doing that. And
Definitely.
I think, Mark, you've been hunting for years and years, and you've got every right to be doing neck and head shots because you're proficient. I don't suggest a new hunter does that to save a bit of meat. I think they should go for the bigger target. It's more forgiving if you're slightly less accurate, and you're still going to get the animal on the ground and the meat in the freezer. Would be my advice.
I think you did right, and it also depends on the animal. So if we kind of say deer and goat, heart lung, it's devastating. It's going to kill it.
Yeah.
Shoulder. So a little bit up, a little bit forward. The idea of shot. And actually, I was watching a hunting
Talk about
video.
the shoulder shot. Talk about that shoulder shot. Talk about why the shoulder shot.
So I was watching a hunting video, one of our page friends tonight, and he shot a red hind, and you could see he took out its shoulder, and it was kind of running, but it was doing this bizarre run where it's basically its head was almost on the ground, but it was almost powering itself just by its back legs. So that was that's a fatal shot. It just its heart hasn't stopped yet. It just hasn't stopped pumping. So heart lung, we all know about the heart lung, and basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to destroy vital organs within the animal, Animals like cars, you shut off the air to them, they don't work. You shut off the fuel line, they don't work. So basically a heart lung either shuts off the air or it shuts off the blood flow.
But often doesn't collapse it, right?
That's right. Because
some room to move.
That's right, because it's not a light switch. So, and because there's blood and there's all sorts of things, and also if you've watched enough animals get shot, that if they're agitated, they'll run anyway. They'll run with a horribly critical shot in them. They'll keep running.
Plus, there's adrenaline pumping and things like that.
It's just it's dead. It's just the nerve endings haven't stopped yet. Everything's still, muscles are still twitching and all that stuff. It's just going. And conversely, if it's at rest or if it's feeding, and you shoot it in the heart lung, you watch it middle, that thing where they'll kind of draw in on themselves and spring forward and then very quickly go to ground. And I've noticed, like when I've shot goats, they seem to respond differently to critical shots in summer than they do in winter. I've noticed that they seem to fall over faster in winter. They just do. They seem to fall over faster. You shoot them, they just fall over faster.
I don't even think I've tried to observe the difference in seasons.
I just noticed that when I used to hunt Severn, I hunt Severn a lot. And I decided, I would hunt the calendar year at Severn. I would hunt every month to see what the difference in the months were. And what I realised was that those animals didn't care about the months. There was plenty of feed on the ground. They'd breed up. If it wasn't, they'd stop breeding. But what I did notice is that when it was colder, they reacted differently to getting shot. They just seemed to kind of give up a lot easier when it was cold than when it was hot. But so I'm not. That's just observation. So you've got heart lung, where basically you're just trying to destroy the heart lung combination. So you're trying to stick a bullet right through the vital organs of the animal. Shoulder is
for the average deer and goat. Describe the position on the animal that the shot placement for heart lung.
Gee, how would I describe that, John? I'm going to let you go off while I have a think about this. How would you describe it?
We're talking about a broadside shot here.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm just trying to think how I might describe it.
Behind the
clearly.
Leg low.
Yeah, so that's what I do. Is I always follow the front leg up, and then I look for the point of the elbow where the elbow comes in, and then
which is on the gut side of the leg.
I kind of look for where
the front side.
you can see there's like a color change.
Yep, that's what I look for. That crease just above the
that's
the elbow.
hard to explain to a lot of people, but there's like there's a natural fold line there.
Yeah.
So that's what I look for. And what I'm trying to do there is I'm trying to avoid the elbow joint. Obviously, I don't want to hit the and I don't want to hit the shoulder blade. I'm trying to get it just behind the shoulder blade.
Yep.
Sometimes you don't get it 100%. You might go through the shoulder if it's a little bit forward. But certainly, I'm trying to get it just behind the shoulder so that I minimize meat damage, but then make sure I get it through the vitals.
How far up and down the chest, from the spine to the bottom of the?
I'm about a quarter of the way up for me.
Quarter of the way up. So it's low in the. It's in the brisket, like it's low in the.
Yeah.
I always think about it. If you do a push up, so you get into a push up position, you realize your heart is quite low, if you know what I mean. You know,
yeah.
You know, it's so if you think about the animal, it's not up high.
It's not standing vertical.
It's actually quite low. So I always kind of work on that bottom third idea.
Yeah, you see that the chest belly, not the belly, but the chest. It's the chest goes quite deep at the elbows. Yeah, and I'm slamming it in there because that's where the lungs sit, and you often get the base of the heart if you're a little bit low.
Yeah. And that's right.
That's
and
a
remember
really good spot for new hunters to be.
That's a good because it's a nice clear spot. Often it's amazing how many animals you can see the slight color change if you've got if you're not rushed, you'll see the slight color change where the kind of not the I don't know, is that called a leg pit? It's an armpit on a human. It's a leg pit where that fold goes over and you see the hair grows slightly differently, there's that color change. With a shoulder shot, it's just basically go up that leg.
Mm-hmm. That's what I did. Yeah, I followed that front leg up.
So a shoulder shot, the idea behind a shoulder shot is that you're immobilizing the animal from the get-go. You're blowing out both, especially on a deer, you're blowing out both its shoulders so it can't move. It's also, of course, ridiculously critical because if you think about where your shoulders are or just below your shoulders are and what's around there anyway. So it's traveling very, very close to heart lung, and often it causes, massive bone damage, which actually damages organs as well. But unless it's a right high shoulder shot, but a shoulder shot is as equally damaging on the animal, but it takes out its legs. Of course, it also takes out meat. There is a meat problem there, but and the idea was that if you're going to shoot something that's going to bite you, shoulder shoot it, so it doesn't turn around and go
running.
That was the idea.
Do you tend to then focus a shoulder shot on a trophy animal rather than a meat animal? You're trying to preserve the shoulders, and there's other shots to preserve the meat. I get that. We'll talk about that shortly.
Yeah.
But that immobilizing shot on a big red stag, it's going to stop it from bolting on you. It's if you heart lung a red stag, it's going to do some distance. It may not do heaps, but it's going to give it enough to get away from you and find cover. Often people are out there looking for stuff. That shoulder shot, it's a good solid meat destroying, but you're going to get your trophy that you're chasing.
It's going to put it down.
Exactly
stop
right.
it from running.
And for me, it's more about the shoulder shot is the shot where I'm under heavier cover. So if I was shooting a fallow in on a farm in a paddock type thing or a big open field, I just heart lung it because it's an easy shot. It's it's going to present itself. There's not going to be any twigs or anything in the way. It's going to present an easy heart lung shot or something else, and you're going to shoot it and you're going to watch it run and you can see it exhaust itself and go to ground. If I was hunting in Nundle and in 20 yards it could disappear off the face of the earth, I'm going to blow its shoulders out.
Interesting. Yeah. I've never shoulder shot an animal ever.
Yeah, I've
always heart lung and a few
nearly all the deer I've shot in Nundle have been shoulder or neck.
Yeah. How do you stuff up a shoulder shot? Like, can you be too high? Can you be too low? Like, you can surely be too low and just break their legs. But How do you get that wrong?
Generally, unless you're way off target and you hit it in the guts, or you hit you so generally with the shoulder shot, it's if you stuff up, you still hit the animal critically. So if you are shoulder shooting and you shot a little bit high, you might spine it.
Yeah.
Which means it's not going to die straight away, but it
drops on the spot.
Again, it's immobilized and it's spined, and so it may actually still be alive, and you need to dispatch it, but it's not going anywhere. If you go a bit far forward, you kind of can sometimes get into the brisket of the neck area, which is still pretty lethal. If you go a bit too far back, you're into the body of the animal, which is again a pretty critical shot. So the stuff up is you go too high, so you shoot over the animal.
And too low, I've seen take out the front legs.
Yeah, but again, that's still a pretty.
It's not a fatal shot. It generally slows them down.
The animal,
but I've seen
one.
Yeah,
they can hobble on 3 legs a long way. I've seen one go a long way.
This one on the video I was watching today. One of the animals it did that weird thing where it's running on 3 legs. So yeah, you can, but that's shooting really low.
Yeah, so that's how you stuff that up.
Yeah.
So then go to the next shot.
So next shot is, for me, the next shot is basically in front of the shoulder shot. So I'm shooting that big area just above the base of the neck. That's
so you shoot the bottom of the neck, not the head side.
Well, no, because it's a bigger area. So, and like on a goat, it's not a particularly long neck.
Yeah, true.
So it's that, and I find that's a pretty fatal shot.
For me, when I've gone neck shots, I usually go closer to the head.
Yeah, if it's a pig, and then we get that's kind of
necks.
I don't high neck them, as you will, generally.
So there might be some weird reactions to this, but on all the animals, but on a bigger animal, if you look at the neck, that's up to the head, it gets bigger at the base as it gets to the chest. There's this triangle area that's quite, well, I would have said well known, that you can put a round through that, and the shock will temporarily paralyze the animal, but that animal will get up and go. And it's been seen a few times, recorded a few times. So you're going through an area that doesn't have bone, artery, whatever. It's a fluke shot, but there's an area close to the chest on the neck.
Yeah, where basically you're thinking. So you're discussing basically where the base of, so almost like it's the
above the jugular.
Yeah, it's
between the jugular
part
and the spine.
It's like, yeah, and since they've got a broader neck, their windpipe's further up. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, no, I'm shooting generally at the
spine
side of the neck, near the spine and all that stuff.
Yeah. So there's been a few interesting things that you see on YouTube from time to time.
So yeah,
people go up to their dead animal, to poke it on the eyeball, and it gets up and either goes them or goes.
So I've seen that with shots close to the spine where you haven't hit bone.
Yeah.
The shock actually into the spinal column causes the animal to drop and stun it. And then when it gets a fright, it ups and runs. It's not fatally wounded at all because you haven't hit solid bone.
And I'm pretty sure that must have happened once with the goat that I shot in Severn. So
you're using a 22.
2 big billies, and I dropped one of them, bang, and down it went. And the second one, and I've got, Darcy was there. I hit this other one, and it was like I hit it with Thor's hammer. It went flat. It didn't fall over. It literally went down. Like
that usually happens with the spine.
Its legs splayed out and it was down. And so I went, it's 2 down, and I went look for the other one. And then we went back and it was gone. And I thought, it's either gone to heaven, or I basically knocked it out somehow.
I use that excuse for every animal I haven't found. It was a good shot. It just
or they fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
Or they fall off a cliff.
Oh, well, that was real.
A guy explained to me the neck shot once, like he explained how when you bait a live bait.
Yes. Yep.
You can keep a live bait alive by sticking a hook right through its body, but not its spine.
Yeah.
So you kind of go under the spine. So you go, it's horribly painful. You think about it, what you're doing, you're digging into the meat of it, but you're not hitting that spine. What I do is I generally shoot on the high side of the neck, the spinal jugular side, and I find that from a 30-06, that just bang, it's a destructive shot, and goats and deer just drop on the spot.
Yep.
Kills them.
Yep.
And it's a good meat shot.
It's an excellent meat shot.
And
Yep.
I've just become comfortable with that shot.
Yeah, I think if you're you know your distances, again,
Yeah.
you're comfortable with your rifle, it's a natural progression to save more
So
meat.
it's not right at the base of the animal, it's up the neck.
Yep.
But yeah. So with pigs, I used to shoot them in the chest, or in the heart, lung, chest area. But after shooting a lot of pigs, I started to stick it basically kind of behind the ear, behind the eye type thing.
Base of the head.
Yeah, and look, I find like I am more and more tempted to go neck headshots on animals purely to save all the mess.
Mm.
Like it's one, like your heart, lung, an animal, and you've turned it into soup on the inside.
Yeah.
And if you want to save
usually
as much of
you're
that
right off
carcass
the
as you
front end,
can.
don't you? The front end's written
Well,
off
no, I
usually.
tend to find that by doing that, I keep the shoulders. But
Oh, okay.
I usually don't damage the shoulders with a.
I
with
usually
a
find
if you go behind
because you
them,
get
yeah.
penetration, one's usually
No,
mashed
I
up.
tend to find that happens too much. You might nick one, but not usually. It's more that, like, I then, you're in the field and you want to get it out, and I've become a bit of a fan of trying to get that whole carcass out, guts out first, just because you can do so much more with the animal for the freezer if you're not just hunters butchering, backstraps out and legs. Trying to turn this thing into chops and other bits and pieces, and get some finer cuts for the table, then taking the carcass is a lot better. You can do a lot better job. Well, I find I can do a lot better job if I can hang it up in a tree and spend the time on it. And also, we usually have new people around us that want to learn, so trying to take the whole thing out helps them go through that process. So the whole soup method is not my favorite at the moment, but it's still my go-to generally.
Serves a purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gets that animal down.
So
Good job.
the other thing, interestingly enough, that I've discovered about banging things in the head, especially pigs, is that so basically I kind of shoot behind the eye ear, which is actually on a big pig is quite nice because you can actually get the crosshair on the. You can
Between
do a nice,
the two. Between the two.
just it doesn't need it doesn't need to be that. It's not like it's a pea inside there and you've got to kind of thread it anywhere behind the eyes, below the ear, behind the eye, or even directly behind the ear. In that area, it's critical. They're getting shot in the head.
Yeah.
They're not walking it off. But what I found was, with soft points, this weird thing would happen. You'd shoot them, and they do that thing where they're on the ground spinning in a circle on themselves. So they're lying on their side running.
Oh yeah.
Because they wouldn't ever run away. They'd be on their side running. They wouldn't. They just go over and they do this kind of kick out, run out type thing. And often there'd be lots of blood squirting out. But what I found was that with soft points, that would happen. And what we realized is they were just fragmenting inside the brain. And so I went to because I was shooting Federals then. I was shooting Federal soft point. I went to Federal Fusion, which is their bottom level bonded projectile. And that when that hit them in the head, they just lights out. It would just bang, down they'd go, and they would move. Though of course, if you see a big boar and you want to do the whole skull mount, this isn't good for skull mounting because it does it pulverizes it. So then you kind of think, okay, where do you shoot him? And then you get into the kind of heart, lung, shoulders. It can be a bit hard on pigs, and also the way they're kind of built. You can hit them in the shoulder, and it doesn't do as much, critical damage to the body. And a big boar does often have a big fighting pad on there, so their shoulders are armored up, and so you can. And I remember quite vividly a mate running away from a pig after he shot it with his 222.
More than one person be treated by a pig,
and it hit the mud. And I remember to this day, it was like a war movie where they shoot they're shooting the German tanks with the Shermans, and they're not having an effect, and they go, bing! It's kind of just dirt just came up, and the pig just spotted him and went straight at him, and he ran away, and he had 222. So that the amount of, if they've been wallowing and they're covered in mud and it's all in their hair and their shoulders, so the heart lungs often I think a safer shot on a big pig like that. And big pigs don't run that far. Don't run that far. They bleed a lot.
That's shot placement, but what about shooting position? What do you favour?
Oh, okay.
I know what Mike likes.
Yeah.
Shoot from the hip. Well, we haven't covered the Texas heart shot.
I don't shoot a southern facing target in a northerly direction. I just don't do it.
Good call. Fair enough. We'll leave that one alone.
I've had plenty of opportunities watching goats run off and go, no, I'm going to shoot that thing up the arse, because all you're going to do is kill it for the sake of killing it.
Yeah, for sure.
That's all it does.
So shooting position. Now we're talking. I mean, obviously the position that you're shooting an animal depends on loads of things, but in ideal environment, what's your go-to? You're using a tree rest, using sticks, you're prone. What's your go-to?
For me, if I can get a prone shot, I'll take a prone shot. I carry a Spartan bar pod, not attached to the rifle. I carry it in my chest rig, and I'll put that on if I can. But usually, chasing reds and even fallow, the grass is often too long for that. I usually have shooting sticks with me. I use them first of all to shoot off, and also as a walk, assist me with walking, especially when hunting reds and that, and up in steep country. I use them just to help me up and down the hills. I actually have the Spartan adapter that sits on top of my shooting sticks, and that fits on the universal adapter that I've got. So that fits my bar pod and it fits my shooting sticks. I've shot more animals off the Spartan shooting sticks in the last 3 or 4 years than I have shooting prone. I think I've shot one animal prone, which is a fallow that I got down at Maybole. So, and that's simply because I haven't been able to get a prone shot. I've shot more off shooting sticks or off a tree rest, because that's just the terrain that I was in.
Yeah.
And then shooting goats, shooting quickly, quite often offhand. Down at Pilliga, down at Severn, they're all either tree rest or offhand.
Yeah, that Spartan gear is pretty good. We'll throw a link up on the featured products page on the website for people to have a look at it. The bipods, the adapters, the bits and pieces, they are very expensive. But, you're buying one bipod and then you buy the adapters for each of your rifles and you just use the same one. So it may be expensive for one, but you're not buying 3 or 4, which is really good. So jump over to the features page, have a look at that.
And they weigh nothing.
They weigh nothing as well. Carbon fiber. They're an excellent product. Yeah. Mark?
Generally offhand, which is not good, but that's just how it seems to rock and roll. I don't
up on your deer block where you're watching deer.
Yeah. I might take a rest, or if I'm sitting down, I have shot plenty of animals from a seated position, so on my knee.
On your knees. Yeah.
Yep. So on my bum, on my knee, especially on the deer block, because you're often at, you're above and you're shooting down, and it really lends itself really well because you're staying low profile. It's treed. I don't know how many goats and pigs I've shot off hand and a number of deer. I don't. I'll take a tree rest, especially if there's there's range and there's opportunity to take aim. So like when I shot that goat off the cliff with you, Jono, there was a tree. I just went up to the tree and took a rest and shot it off that. And then I shot a couple offhand, and so yeah, mostly because I tend to I mostly hunt on the move. I have shot a couple of times from a static position, and I quite it was great to sit down and have that static position and have the animals come in. But generally, I'm hunting on the move, and so I tend to shoot opportunistically.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, it tends to be opportunistically. So when I shot those 2 deer, not this year but last year at Nundle, both were offhand.
There you go. I always seek prone position where possible. If I'm seeing the animals before they see me, and in state forest that could be quite difficult sometimes. My morning and night hunts have turned into finding a location, finding habitat, setting up a spot to be able to watch reasonable ground, and that's given me the opportunity to watch the animals, be selective with the animals, and shoot prone, which is perfect for me. That's exactly what I want to do. But the other benefit I've got is hunting with the dog. Outside of those normal shooting times of early morning and late evening, we can go and look for new ground and new habitat and things that we might want to set up another sit and wait spot. And because she indicates, she's usually showing me where deer are bedded at that point, and that gives me the time to get in. Those shots aren't usually prone. Those shots are usually off a tree. Almost never ever offhand for me. I'm not confident in offhand. I'd rather find a tree and do it. And I've watched more than one deer wander off and not put one in offhand. That's just my preference. But it's a different scenario with the dog, being able to find them in beds. Few times now we've found them, where they're well bedded, and you've got to decide whether you want to take a shot on a bedded animal or wait for it to stand, or get impatient and make a noise so it does stand, things like that. So again, another ethical question for you following up from this one is bedded animals. Do you shoot them or not?
For me, it's not an ethical question. I missed. I've only really ever shot at one bedded animal. There was a good stag up in Brisbane Valley, and I missed it. I was way above it. I was up high. I was coming down. I could see him through the trees. I could see the hinds milling around. I spent about half an hour bum scooting down that hill. Stag didn't know I was there. Just everything was perfect. Put on the stalk, everything like that. Put the rifle on my knee, straight over top of it. And it was bedded. And that's one of those ones I should have just gone, oi.
Yeah, let them stand.
Bang, and that was it. So yeah, that's probably the only bedded animal I've shot, except for a pig. I shot a pig in a wallow, and it was in a wallow, so it wasn't. Well, it was in a prone position, but it was in a wallow. And I shot that, and shot that in the up high above the shoulder in the meat, and it got up and put another one into it. But yeah, I haven't shot that many animals in that position.
Jono, do you want to explain why shooting a bedded animal's not ideal?
Well, the whole structure where the organs move, they change. If you think about, if you lie down, your body changes, everything changes.
Yeah.
And so where you think the organs are is probably not where they're going to be, because everything's going to be squished down a little bit. They're going to be a different angle. The shoulder's going to be, the elbow's going to be at a different angle and a different position. So it does change. If you're going to go for a neck shot, then the neck doesn't change, but you need to be sure of your shot and make sure you've got a really solid rest. I've only ever shot one animal that was bedded, which was a fallow. This was in the UK. We spotted this fallow in this part of the forest that was opposite us, but between us and them was a big open field, big muddy paddock. We actually barely crawled across that paddock until we got about halfway through, and we just kept an eye on the hind, and she just stayed bedded the whole time. And then we got ready, and my mate Austin that I was with, he said, when you're ready to take the shot, and sit up, and she will look at you and she will stand up. When she stands up, you've got 10 seconds to take a shot, and that's what we did. So she basically, I sat up, we barely crawled, we had a little bit of a ridge, barely crawled, got to a position. I had shooting sticks in a seated position. I just sat up, she saw us and sort of lifted her head, stood up, and I shot her, and she dropped on the spot. So that's the only time I've ever shot a bedded animal.
She wasn't bedded.
Well, she was bedded initially, but I got her up from the bed.
Yeah, so not bedded. I'm talking about putting the shot on the animal while it's still on the ground.
I think the only successful animal, the only successful animal I've ever shot in a bedded position was a pig and a wallow.
Yeah, I've never shot one still lying down. And I'm hesitant to do that just because of the way the body changes when they lie down.
And that pig and the wallow was really interesting because I'd been hunting at Severn there for nearly 10 years when I got that pig.
Sorry, mate. You can't hear that in the background. My dog's dreaming.
No.
Dreaming of a deer.
Dreaming of hunting deer. We're talking about hunting deer, and she's off into La La Land.
The first time I ever hunted Severn, I hunted with Adrian, and we shot a heap of goats. And as we were leaving in Adrian's vehicle, driving back to camp in the morning, this big pig ran across the track, and my brain didn't register it was a pig. I went, "What is that weird looking thing?" Because I'd just been seeing goats and realised it was a pig, and so that was it. I went, "Oh, I missed it." And then for nearly 10 years, I didn't see another pig in Severn.
Yeah, right.
And it was stinking hot, and we were moving up on a dam, and Tim was up in front with the lever action, and he had that marlin where with marlin you can stuff the safety on them basically, and he looked over and this other pigs, and then he went click and dropped it on an empty chamber, and the pig went bing, and we said, "Okay, don't chase it, just let it go." And we came back the next day, and I was in front, and it was back. We got it. So yeah, and that was the only. I've never just had that luck where I can see them bedded. It's just if I'm walking and they're in front of me and I don't see them, they'll stand up. I've shot plenty like that, but I've never had that opportunity. That's why one of the reasons why I want to get a dog, so I can get a bit more opportunity like that. But
you certainly do. Yeah,
it's just not a thing I've ever really done. Opportunities to find wombat holes. Yeah, I haven't seen too many bedded animals.
Yeah, well, I hadn't shot a bedded animal until this year, and I wouldn't have taken the shot, but this fellow hind on the other side of the gully walked in front of me and then just crouched down, and it had its back legs underneath it like a dog and its front legs out in front of it, and it just sort of squatted, and I could see the full shape of its body wasn't twisted and lying. It was just sort of resting
legless
there for a second. So I just thought, oh well, that looks good to me, and I just took it, and it was fine. But not normally.
I suppose a bedded animal too, you're going to lose a fair bit of meat too. It's compacted and
all compacted.
Yeah, there's different type of hunting. Some people are just.
So I mean, it's probably a very critical shot on the animal.
Yeah.
So like when hunted goats early in the year, I was neck shooting all those goats, except for the ones when we had a bit of a stuff up and the goats, it didn't work and the goats were on the run, and I shot a couple of them on the run. The ones when I was stalking them, had the opportunity, I just neck shot them. And a big billy's got a big neck; it's a big target.
Yeah. All right. I think we covered shot placement, shooting position.
I suppose the other thing that kind of, again, kind of tricked my interest was that there was a recent post on Facebook. I think it's still, I'm just going to jump and have a look. It's a today's post, actually. It's 7 hours. Robert Borsak put up this post about conservation hunters, and it's called Conservation Hunters Vindicated. I'm not going to read it all out, but basically what he was saying was that there's supposedly an elusive long-footed potteroo that's made its first appearance in New South Wales. And Robert points out that it was not in a national park, but it was actually in Bondi State Forest, which is a logging, hunting, motorcycle riding state forest. And he goes on to talk about, the idea of conservation hunters in New South Wales. And some of you might remember there was a sticker for a while. There was like a sticker on a gum leaf. It was like a green gum leaf.
Hunting is conservation?
Hunters, first in conservation or something like that, conservation hunters on it. It's when it was the Game Council. So it started this idea that when you hunted a state forest in New South Wales, you were obligated to shoot everything because you were, for want of a better word, you were a conservation hunter. So you were pest managing. And to me, when I started hunting in state forest, that's how I both understood it and how it was explained to me. I remember once, the first state forest hunt I did with other people, like a group of people, was Nundle, and I'd been hunting ADA red deer blocks where, it's like, oh, don't shoot that mongy-headed thing because next year that'll be the monarch, the Glen with, a double 12, and, every deer was like, the shooting requirements was very, very restrictive on a lot of animals. And same crew crossed the border to New South Wales, and I saw this fallow deer in a open paddock, and I went, oh, it's a doe, and they said, flatten everything, So it was we went from 7 hours before we were preserving everything to 7 hours later we were flattening everything. And I remember, that was quite a jolt to the system. So to go from same people saying don't shoot to shoot. And I know that you and I, Ian, had this conversation, and you pointed out that, that is not necessarily the case now in New South Wales with conservation hunting. So I made some calls and spoke to some people, and they said, yeah, that's actually the case. It's kind of from a policy point of view, and that the idea of conservation hunting has been replaced with recreational hunting. And I thought, well, okay, that's interesting. So it's a policy, but I suppose what is the ethics then of recreational hunting in New South Wales, especially since you're hunting on public land and you're hunting feral species? And I know people don't like to call them feral species, but let's just pick that name. So you're hunting non-native species, which a lot of people argue are detrimental to the environment. What's your obligation around that? And if you don't have a legal obligation or a policy obligation, do you still have a social obligation? And does that social obligation extend to all creatures? So, does it extend to deer?
It's
a interesting
It's
one.
a tough question to answer, and I'll answer it in one way, and then I'll probably contradict myself with the second part of it. But I think when the R license system, the R license system first came in, it was a bit of a shock that it happened, and there needed to be some impact. There needed to be some proof to the argument. There needed to be some, data-driven outcomes, and that happened. And then over time, the community earned the right to be able to hunt in these locations based on economic impact as well. It wasn't just a conservation hunting outcome. It was the billions of dollars of revenue that hunters brought into the regions. So I feel like that policy change is largely because the hunting community and that R license program has earned the right to exist for whatever the purpose of the hunter is. Take the hunter away, and the whole program falls flat, and so does all of that money. So, I can't verify that. It's just the way I feel about it. So to answer the question about what is my responsibility, well, you know what? I've paid my dues. I've helped the process, and it is now a recreational asset that I can use, like they do in America, to target a species for the purpose that I would like to target it for, as long as it's within the laws and it's ethical. And what I mean by ethical, I'm doing the right thing by the animal. I'm not, causing it undue pain and suffering, all of those sorts of things. If I want to go and target one animal and chase it for the next 5 years because I get it on a game camera, then that's something I feel like I have the right to do. And I don't have to destroy every other pest that walks in front of me to ruin that hunt. I can let them walk freely because there are thousands of other hunters that want to chase pigs when I want to walk around them. And there are plenty of people that want to chase goats and other things. So that's kind of my answer, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
John?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I first got my license and started hunting in Nundle, there was still the game season. You could only hunt deer at it.
Yeah, that's right.
Specific times of the
They
year.
were a game. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was classed as game, and then they changed that, and they became feral.
Well, they all they did was they simply removed the game status.
Yeah, correct, and they became
so they just said
animal.
They're still the same
feral,
animal. They've just, and I think they just kind of suspended the game status.
So there used to be you couldn't hunt them at a certain time of the year. I think when they were breeding,
it was somewhere in October it ended.
When they were getting ready to drop.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me that was quite a big deal. I felt that, and look, I'm an immigrant to Australia. I don't know the history of it. I've come from South Africa, where game species are revered, and conservation in South Africa means something different. They put things behind high fences, and they protect them, and they take out the the predators, and they breed those species up. Here it's public land, it's shared use, and the animals shouldn't have been here in the first place. They are introduced, but in my view, the animals have been here long enough that they should have a status, that they shouldn't just be, every single animal should be killed. And I mean, that's my personal view. I know many people disagree with that. They think there's a deer, it shouldn't be here, shoot it, take it out. I think there should be protection of them. I think they should be classed as game, because they've been here long enough, and whether they're on public land or private land, I think they should have some sort of status. My viewpoint.
Yeah, that's an interesting, that gets right into what makes a feral. And from a dictionary point of view, anything born wild is not feral. So feral is, I think, technically that generation that has gone feral. That's a feral.
Yeah, I guess.
So, a feral animal is an animal that has gone feral. So it was in a domesticated situation. It's no longer a domesticated situation. So you could quite reasonably argue that, well, if it's not ever born in domestication, is it a feral animal? And you could say probably not.
So it's an introduced species.
It's an introduced wild.
It's non-native. Yeah, it's non-native.
Yeah. But then you get into the question of, okay, when does native become native? That's really interesting, because there's a lot of argument that dingoes are not. They were introduced by man.
And they were from somewhere else.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. They came across through Papua and all that stuff. That's why the Papuan wild dog are similar. And then so you kind of, and then if you look at buffalo, for instance, buffalo were introduced. They try to create. They wanted a bovine that was more suited for the tropics. That's why they brought buffalo into the northern tropics, and it collapsed. And so they went free. So they just basically let the ones that were there free, and there was obviously enough of them to create breeding stock, and so those buffalo, for I don't know how many generations, have never known domestication. They've known the only world they've ever known is that world. You know, they don't. They're this, and it's the same with deer in Queensland. You know, whilst red deer have been there's been introductions along their life cycle. So, you know, there's been deer farms and stuff like that. There was this idea, and it's, you know, there was a number of deer released at the very beginning that have only ever known wildlife. Their bloodline has only ever been wild.
Sure. And to your point about when is native, where's the date line? You know, there's a moment in time that a date line has been drawn and everything on the wrong side of that line is introduced.
Yes.
Now, there's a huge discussion here that we won't get into about Indigenous, you know, and what was, you know, who was here first, what was here first, what's considering this, but who's making the decision? I don't want to get this wrong, and I guess the editing will help me out here if I sound bad. I don't want to sound bad here. So I'll choose my words carefully, but I wonder who's making the decision about the deer that were gifted to the colonists when they came here by the Queen for the purpose of game hunting, meat producing.
Yeah, meat production.
You know, that pastime of hunting, right?
Yeah.
So yes, there's an argument that says, you know, white settlement has introduced these, you know, these animals into the country, but it seems to be that it's the current day government that is deciding what's feral and what's not feral, or what should or shouldn't be here, or what status they have, not Indigenous Australia. And I might get that really badly wrong, but you know what I mean. It's the government of the day that's making this decision that we're going to strike deer off the game list. It's not because Indigenous Australia say no, that shouldn't be here because, you know, we've got sacred grounds and, you know, introduced species shouldn't be here. I haven't heard anyone say that before. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't, but I haven't heard it. So I think it's quite interesting that a gift from the
really
Queen
interesting.
I know it's really hard to dance around.
Well, no, it's because
you know what I'm saying, right? You know what I'm saying.
And, you know, like I can
get me out of trouble.
Well, no, it's not. You're not in trouble because, I mean, I just been looking again at some stuff. You know, like there was that report, and this is go back to your thing about conservation hunting and recreational hunting and the benefits beyond conservation. Like there's that report, I think it's the 2022 report or 2021 report by the DPI in New South Wales that basically said that, you know, hunting is behind cattle, horticulture and meat sheep, not wool sheep, meat sheep, then hunting. As Turner's and number two
as a GDP producer,
as number two behind cattle is fishing.
Yeah,
and that's recreational and charter fishing, not commercial fishing. So from a financial point of view, they're huge. But the weird, this whole introduced animal thing is such a weird thing because, you know, bees are introduced.
No, I didn't know that.
Honeybees are introduced.
How does pollination?
We have
the native bee was.
Oh, the native bee.
Native bees.
Sure.
You know, the
Capilano,
Mr. Capilano bee.
Yeah.
He's introduced.
So does that mean we have to eradicate all those bees?
No, because we just happen to be supporting all the bee stocks around the world because they're having that problem and we don't have that mite, or, you know, they discovered that mite.
We do now.
In New South Wales, now we're going, shit, it's finally here.
Varroa mites here to stay.
But that creature is introduced. And if someone said to you, right? Let's get rid of all the bees because they're introduced, you know, literally, you know, people would be rioting in the streets. There's another really weird animal, trout.
Yeah.
Trout.
So we
trout have a season.
Yeah,
There's this whole thing about, if you catch a trout without a fly, you might as well, be throwing dynamite at it. You're a lower
Heathen
form
fisherman.
of life if you're not fly fishing.
But as you
and
say,
all that
they've got a river season.
That's right. They actually have a
New
season.
South Wales.
There is,
Yeah.
So to say, it's an introduced species and you can't do that. Well, actually, we do. There is a number of introduced species that we kind of, and then you get that really weird thing about trans introduction. And I don't mean transgender, but as in trans in Australia. So, for instance, I didn't know that kookaburras were introduced to Tasmania.
Well, right. This happens all the time. The eastern grey kangaroo is not endemic to my area. They're here now, but that was because someone fostered some young ones, grew them, and then decided to let them go. And now the eastern grey kangaroos are pushing the native wallaby out of our region.
Yeah.
But they're not endemic to this
I used
location.
to hunt at John has hunted there as well. There's a private a paid block back at Toowoomba up in down there, and the guy who used to own it, he recently sold it. He talked about a time when there wasn't kangaroos on that block.
Yeah,
he said, and you talk to guys who've been up in the Brisbane Valley, they'll say the same thing. Once upon a time, it was all those nail tail, those rock wallaby type things.
yeah,
Yep.
And the greys have come in. So you get, and that's purely human.
It's drought migrations and those sorts of things.
But it's the fact that we create dams and we create
This
pasture and all that
goes
stuff.
back to the date line. Just because they weren't here on the other side of 1980 doesn't mean that the native Australian population hasn't migrated further. It's the same as the great migration of these deer that we're talking about. No one can argue that the populations of deer aren't growing at a pretty damn fast rate.
Yeah.
Right. No one can argue that that's the truth. And if you're going to talk about the honeybee, I don't know the answer to this. Is the honeybee damaging more than it's helping?
Well, that's a really interesting. I think that's because then we get into the, I think that one of the really spooky things of this is that there's also, the kind of there's the emotive part in it, because if you look at that stat there from New South Wales and you believe the New South Wales government in that stat, which says that, and it unfortunately hasn't got the numbers on it, but if it says that hunting is number 4 in the rural industries, the 4th largest rural industry, primary industry, and only to cattle, horticulture, and meat sheep, and then it's hunting. If you were to split that up into, say, okay, hunting pigs, hunting goats, hunting deer, or something like that, deer would equate for a significant chunk of that.
Sure.
And I would say that now that number alone would be greater than the 92 million that we say deer cost. We say deer cost the nation 92 million.
Sure.
I'm sure that number there is higher.
We got a billion in front of our number.
That's right. I'm sure that number, and that's in. So basically, we're saying deer cost the nation 92 million. New South Wales deer make double, triple, whatever it is. So the economic numbers get really spooky, because you kind of go, well, and if you want, and if you look at the Northern Territory experience around barramundi, barramundi went from being, $20 a kilo to for a guy in Melbourne who wants to catch a barramundi, they work out about $600 a kilo, because and the thing is, then you don't eat it, you throw it back in.
Yeah.
So they just realised that thing was far more profitable as a pursuit species rather than a meat table species. So saying about deer is and hunting itself, you kind of you get, it gets really spooky. So getting the slide rule and say, cost versus input versus output, or profit or return on investment, as you will, or whatever it is. That also is very, very challenging. Because you could say, well, actually, if that's the case, then we should be having more deer because they're worth a lot more money.
Yeah. So let me take it back to your question. The question about what is my responsibility as a hunter?
Well, let's not say your responsibility. What is your
my
ethical
right? So if they were to reopen, if they were to open the same scenario in Queensland, for example, and say, okay, here's an R license system, but we're doing it because the deer numbers are increasing, and we don't actually have a plan to reduce them other than helicopter shooting, which is not doing enough. And the purpose behind it that was spoken about, in the training literature and all throughout the LEAP training when you went through your club to get accredited, if it was about reducing numbers, then I would feel quite a bit different about how I approached it. Now, look, people are still going to want to hunt the rut, and they're still going to want to chase that big buck. But if to keep hunting, there was this overarching statement that said we had to reduce the numbers by X%, and the hunting community is going to do it. And if you don't, we take it away. Guess what's going to happen? We're all going to get in there and do our bit. And I think for me, until you earn the right to, like they have in New South Wales, to stand on your feet as a what's the word I'm looking for, as a industry, then you follow the guidelines and you just
The issue I've got there is as soon as you put recreational in front of it, people are going to want to try and preserve it. So you want to try and hunt that big buck. You're going to try and you want a bigger stag next year. You're not going to shoot every stag that you see. So in Queensland, if you want to get rid of all the deer, keep them as feral and tell people to just shoot them.
Very true. But if you look at the New South Wales model, so because one of the big, we won't name names, we don't have to, but one of the big arguments about having an R license system is it's going to be this slaughter and there's going to be no more majestic red deers and all that stuff like that. You go, well, okay, well that's never happened anywhere for a start. So where you can hunt deer in this country has not led to the extinction of deer.
No.
And in Victoria, this last year was I think they had more licensed hunters than ever before. And those licensed hunters shot 120,000 deer or roundabout. Hasn't led to the extinction of deer, but it's led to a better management outcome. And what's happened in New South Wales is exactly the same thing. It hasn't led to the extinction of deer, but what it's done is created an industry that they recognise is very, very valuable. So it's actually matured over time. So the idea of that you can't bring it in Queensland because it will lead to the extinction of animals, one, is doesn't seem to play out, and two, it would appear that if you look based on this New South Wales model, what happens within a period of 10 to 15 years, you have a maturity of the system anyway. And so then you create a recreational. So, and so you do, you get out there and you do what you should do, and then and over time things move.
Yeah. And
so,
I think
I think
to counter your argument, Jono, we've taken a lot of people into New South Wales hunting scenarios, and there's a caliber of hunter that, gets, after they've shot however many deer and they feel like they're a hunter and they feel like they're good at what they're doing, start to really focus on the animal that they want rather than the one that walks in front of them. But the reality is, if we go and have a look at 30 people or 40 people that we've helped into our license this year, last year, over the last couple of years, they shoot what walks in front of them.
Yep.
There's no second thought about preserving that animal for next year, because they're still looking for their first, second, third or fourth animal, and just seeing one is an experience for them. Yep. And then you look at the other side of that coin and you go and have a look at the red deer that Profty shot, on public land, and he worked his ass off for it. And they put themselves into situations and deep into gullies and things that the average bear is not going to, attempt, and they still get the fruits. You see this in Victoria as well with public land hunting down there. Those that venture deeper, get to the unspoilt land, and they still get those really high quality trophies. And I think that still exists for the more adventurous. But if I was to put a percentage on it, you got to say 90+% of people that walk into state forest to chase deer are going to shoot what walks in front of them.
Yeah.
Whether it's a yearling, a hind in November or not.
And look,
we need to convince the government of that, though. That's the problem.
Well, I think
Sure.
I think there's another wheel that spins on that idea, and that is, like, I was involved for a long time within the vocational education area for construction, and I was on lots and lots of boards and committees and stuff like that. And this argument used to come up all the time, which was
Mark, sorry, your volume's dropped.
Oh.
Mate, can you pull the...
Oh, how's that? Better?
Yeah, better. Yeah, thanks.
Much better.
Okay.
Much better.
So this argument sprang up over time that I'd heard time and time again, where someone would say, these apprentices that that are coming into the workforce are not good because they're not productive enough. Okay. And
Yeah.
you know, you kind of immediately respond to that by going, oh, okay, well, we've got to improve their productivity. But if you took a second to think about it and you actually apply it to what you're talking about, is that to become a considered ethical hunter, you don't go from buying a rifle to that. It's a journey.
No. Yeah.
And the only way to experience that journey is to shoot stuff. And like to be for a tradesperson to be a highly productive tradesperson, they have to start as a completely unproductive apprentice, and they have to go through it. So there's no use measuring, yourself. And I'm not talking about anyone in particular, but it's no use measuring a newbie against a person who's been doing it all their life.
Right.
And I think sometimes I think people do that. They kind of go, I wouldn't, you see it on Facebook all the time. Someone will put up a picture with a grid on it and said, where would you shoot this animal? E3. And someone will pipe in, I wouldn't shoot that animal because it's not developed enough. And you go, yeah, okay, buddy, great. We'll get you a cape. You can fly around the room later. Because one, that's just not helpful. No one learns from that. And two, that's you. But if you were the first time out and you were looking at that and no one had shown you anything else, and you were actually asking yourself, where do I shoot the animal?
Any one of those shot placements would have done. Usually. That's
right, and that's the thing. That's the other thing too, because you get into that. It's got to be E3, not E4. So, guys, we're not shooting Polaris missiles across the country.
Marksmen right here, all of them.
But that's it. And I always say, people say, is it this part of the heart or that part of the heart? And I say, which part of the heart don't you want to be shooting? Which part's the okay to get shot in? What part's that? But I think that's what happens. People measure other people. So if I introduce some guy to hunting and he goes down and he shoots a couple of deer and he's excited as he can be, and they were the first 2 deer shot, I say, good, he started the journey.
Yeah,
and then it's up to us who are a bit more experienced to say, okay, so here's the next part of the journey. Here's the next part of the journey. And I look at someone like Profty, who is a kind of shining example of someone on that journey. He's kind of going, okay, I'm moving, and as I move, my focus changes and all that stuff, and what I want to do and how I want to do it, and it changes, and that's the journey. And the thing about that journey is, it's a lovely journey, and it makes a lovely story at the top end, but everyone's got to go through the mud to get to the top end. You can't kind of jump the shark and say, oh, look, we're gonna show you how to be this kind of windswept and interesting experienced hunter. No, what we're going to do is we're going to get you in a safe position. We're going to get you your first animal. We're even going to get you your first year of animals, and then you're going to start your journey yourself, and you're going to start asking questions about, is this the right caliber? Where do I shoot that animal? What and that stuff. But you've got to get people to start. So I'm completely happy if someone posts a picture of the first deer they shot and it's a yearling. Good.
Sure.
Oh,
Mate,
Go for it.
absolutely. And there's been plenty of people that we've taken that the first deer. I mean, what a perfect meat deer.
That's right.
Beautiful.
All deer.
Sometimes lighter to carry.
I always,
all of that good stuff.
and, you know, off the cuff, if someone says, "Do you shoot trophies?" and I said, "Every animal shoots a trophy." That's it. That's how I look at it. They're all trophies. You know, they're
Can
all
you
some
imagine?
type.
Can you imagine the day that they launch? I mean, this is a pipe dream, but they launch the R license program in Queensland. The stampede to be the first person in that forest in 25 years that's not a poacher.
Yeah.
There was
will be
there was a
just
few stampedes.
Legal
There was a
hunter.
few stampedes with the R license in New South Wales.
Yeah,
I knew a guy who, you know, one of the first people in Severn.
like a land grab.
Me and Tim went into a forest on the first week that it was opened. We'd already found a dead pig in there. So I don't know if that was an early, you know, a very, very productive young man who was waiting there for the 12 o'clock to tick over. But yeah, we went in first. And so when we booked, we were the first ones booking. I mean, yeah, that's really exciting, that stuff.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
We did. Let's move the subject.
But one thing about that, so we've either intentionally or otherwise skirted this idea in some ways, because we've been talking about the beautiful, you know, Bambi and how wonderful and majestic they are. Does that same thought process apply to foxes and pigs? Because we know that foxes and cats, especially foxes and cats, we know that they most definitely predate on native species to numbers that can drive those to extinction. So are you obliged to blow up every cat and fox you see?
Oh, that's so hard.
That's a difficult one.
So is the obligation greater than your personal glory about shooting a big fellow buck?
So I'll answer that first.
Good.
In Nundle, I was in prime deer country, and I knew there were some bucks around because Mr. Hurley had told me that there were some bucks hanging around there. And I saw a fox. And I watched the fox, and I took photos of the fox. Did I shoot the fox? No, because I was in prime buck country. So it does influence my my decision.
100%. 100%. And, you know, foxes, I mean, I have an absolute dead set hatred for feral cats, or for any cat, domestic or other, that is outside killing wildlife. I'm against, but will I shoot a cat to ruin my deer hunt? Not on your life. No, it won't be a pig, it won't be a goat, it won't be anything. I'll step around that if my focus is on deer for that weekend. Now, if I'm out just generally scouting a park to have a look around, yes, if it's a feral, I'm gonna smack it. It's funny, I probably wouldn't. So if it's a cat or a fox or a wild dog, yes, absolutely, I'll knock it over. But not a pig, funnily enough, because there's so many interested pig hunters out there. I'm sort of kind of happy to leave them for those that chase pigs.
And the same with foxes. There's people who do fox calling. And
Yeah,
all that. So,
but it's easier. It's easier to go fox calling. You know, an old mate. I know it's funny. You go and ask old mate down the road on his farm if he's going to let you come onto his property to hunt deer. He's probably going to say no. He'd probably let you whistle up a fox though.
Or if you said I want to shoot dogs,
to chew on his lambs.
Or you say wild dogs.
Yeah, like they'll let you do that, but they, you know, that's your way into then talking about hunting deer later on. So, you know, I think if you're a gun fox hunter, you're not doing it in state forest. I wouldn't have thought. Anyway,
look, and on private land, you know, I've got more pats on the back from shooting wild dogs. And when I'm on the blocks up at in Brisbane Valley, if I'm hunting deer and I see dogs, I go, okay, this is a dog hunt, because I just feel obliged to. And,
someone's property, state land.
It's
but
private land.
On
different.
Public land, I will always shoot pigs first.
Yeah, we know that. But will you ruin your pig hunt?
Because you know what? The deer will be there tomorrow.
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Would you,
Would you
would, you,
shoot-
would you blow your pig hunt because a fox walked in front of you?
Would I blow? Probably.
You'd shoot the fox. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Mm.
We were at the. I'm pretty sure it was the Pilliga. We're in the Pilliga, and we were on this sort of long march wherever we were going for the afternoon, and we sat down on a log to have a bite to eat. And a bloody fox ran out from inside the log, scared the bejesus out of me. And the fella that was with me was like, "Shoot it, shoot it!" I'm like, you know what? I'm here to hunt what I'm here to hunt, and I don't just shoot stuff to kill it. Even though it's a feral, I get it, but I don't know, probably the wrong thing to say, but that's just my...
But generally, I will defer to killing predators. I will generally, if I'm on a hunt and we spot a cat or something, and go, yeah, shoot it.
Yeah,
One
if
is I don't believe that one shot changes all the dynamics in the forest. I mean, a volley of shots and lots of yahooing and running around does, but I don't believe a single well-placed shot changes the dynamics in the forest that much. And two, I just think, if I see a fox or a cat, I don't have any particular. I just think that it's obligated. But with pigs, it's simply because I just like shooting pigs so much, so I'll always shoot pigs. Can't help it. And the bigger they are, the more I like it. So
yeah, it's different for me if it's private. If I'm hunting Brisbane Valley, I've got an obligation to the farmer to shoot a dog.
If that's the reason you're there, but like some of these other places that we've been recently, that we frequent a few times a year, pay $100 a night to go.
Yeah, that's a different thing again. I think that's different.
No,
yeah,
and
that's
my return.
Yeah, I can. That's different. I think that's different. And look, and I think legitimately that's a reason when hunting public land, because you still got to pay. So, and in fact, hunting public land for us in Queensland to hunt Nundle is not a cheap. I mean, it's not a ridiculously expensive exercise, but it's not cheap. We've got to fuel vehicles, and so I think that's a reasonable argument. But for me, that's my fallback position. Though I have to admit that I do not like shooting dogs at all. I actively dislike shooting dogs. Foxes I don't care about. Cats I don't care about. I don't have any. I just think that's a predator. It's going to do damage. It's got to go. Pigs, I've got a natural inclination to hunt pigs. But dogs, I actively dislike shooting dogs. I'll do it, but boy, I just dislike doing it. I dislike doing it.
I don't see him as a dog.
I do. I see him as dog.
I see him as a different thing.
I can't not look at a dog.
The ferals are like that. Feral
dogs.
I
haven't been able. I can't look at a dog and think that's not a dog. I think.
Fair enough.
And in fact, when I look at a wild dog, I probably feel more in tune with it because it's a predator, and I think, well, I'm a predator and it's a predator, so yeah.
And the apex predator has a place in wildlife.
Yeah.
What else is knocking down populations? I mean, the kangaroo and the wallaby populations are pretty big. They're only getting bigger and bigger, and they're migrating like everything else is. They're the only things that are keeping them down. We can't shoot or hunt them, so I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah,
that's a good thought.
I must admit, I was with Tim once, and I shot a number of dogs, and I turned around and said, "Well, that's the last one. That's it. I'm done now." I meant I'm done. I don't want to shoot. I have shot since then, but it was a long time before I did it again. I just said, I can't do that again. I can't stomach shooting them.
So, subject change slightly. So, still on the subject of ethics and do's and not do's and things like that.
I think that's do's and don'ts, by the way.
Do's and don'ts, do's and not do's, do's and don'ts. Yeah. Do-do's and not do-do's. That's a poo joke. Everyone likes a poo joke. What do you tend to do on public land? You're heading into your pre-planned hunt spot, and there's someone parked up there already.
Okay. I generally don't have a single pre-planned hunt plan because
Last year's favourite spot?
wind.
Sure.
The wind, my friend, the wind is ultimately what determines. So I don't have a single one because if I get there and the wind's wrong, well, I don't go, this is my place. So I usually have a couple of things I want to. So I always have a backup plan or another place I want to try, because if I get there and it's not what I think it's like, I want to be able to go. I don't want to go, we're stuck here now. I want to be able to move. So to me, it could be, like for instance, there could be a machine parked there that shouldn't be parked there, but there is. So I kind of go, okay, we're just not going to hunt here and we move on. So it's not that big a concern for me.
You'll just move on.
I would just go to plan B. I'd go plan B.
Public land. They're entitled to be there as much as I am.
Yeah. It's not that. It's just that I just kind of, it's just an inconvenience that I just plan B around.
Jono, flip that statement around. Say it again.
What do you mean flip it around?
You're entitled to be there as much as they are.
Yeah, well, if they're an ethical, legal hunter, they've got their own license. They're allowed to be in that forest if they booked in.
Oh, no, not disputing that, but you've rocked up there already. You're in a location that you're quite keen to hunt. You've been there a few different times. There's a vehicle parked up there. You have as much right to be there as anyone else. Are you going to continue in that area to pursue what you planned?
Not if they were there before me. If they got up earlier, they got up earlier than me in the morning and they got into that spot. They're entitled to be there. If they chose that spot, as long as they didn't. If it's not someone from camp who I told this is where I'm hunting in the morning and told them my secret spot, and then they got up half an hour before me and went there, then I'd potentially
let their ties down. Yep.
But I try not to have secret spots.
But it's public land, and if someone's done the scouting and chosen an area that I thought was a good area, then I'm a little bit flattered by that, to be honest.
I was in a spot last year. I had my blaze on, so I was visible. I was sort of quite close to an overgrown track that obviously didn't get a lot of use, and I was parked up with a really good vantage over an area, and a car with 3 hunters. Now, this was an area that was only allowed 3 hunters, and I was already there. So a car with 3 hunters came by. So one was a spectator, of course. It's the only way it could possibly have happened. Drove straight up to me, wound the window down, said hi, and then carried on up that track in his car. Bashed his way past where I was sitting waiting, and carried on another 400 or 500 meters down that track before they stopped and got out and went hunting. So,
and in reality, probably thought nothing of that and I don't mean nothing of it because they were assholes and didn't care. Thought nothing of it because they just went, yeah, sure.
So I'm going to leave this paddock. I just drove straight through and leave it.
I've met other people when I've been out hunting, and like we were at Severn once, and we could hear this thing coming, and it sounded like the Tin Man was coming out of the forest. Like I expected the bloody, literally you could hear this like click clink clink, click clink clink, click clink clink, click clink clink coming, and I went, what the hell is that? And it's just this guy, and he was just noise, and I went. And we came over and he was talking to him and stuff and he actually recognised me. He said, "Hi, Mark." And I went, "Who's this?" And he recognised me from the magazine. And I went, and we spoke to him and stuff like that. And he had a dog with him. And he said, "Oh, I haven't seen any ghosts." And I felt like saying, I probably understand why. But, in a way he did us a favour because we went, if he was like 15 minutes early or 15 minutes later, we may have gone over his clink track that he probably blazed through that forest and scared all the game away anyway. So I kind of just went, that's, and when I was in the Pilliga, actually the first time I ever hunted the Pilliga, this Hilux with dogs on the back came up. Came out of the forest, and they came up and they were talking to us, and it was obvious they weren't legal, and they kind of went, we've been that way, and again I went, oh, okay, well, we won't go that way because you probably scared everything off.
Mm.
And I remember once we're in town, and the young fellas we were getting a tyre fixed, and the young fellas were telling us about this dam that they all go down to and shoot and drink, piss and yahoo around. None of them were licensed, and when we visited that dam, it did look like that's exactly what they'd been doing. And what they used to do is they used to prop dead goats up on logs and stuff, just to, so people go, oh, there's a goat there and stuff like that. So I kind of, in many ways, I kind of think it's almost a bit of a blessing, really. Kind of go, oh, okay, don't focus on that area.
Don't go there. You never know.
Yeah, leave it alone.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Haroon, did it twice to Tim and Darcy on our last trip to Nundle, and that is, and I kid you not, they were driving down the main drag, and off the side they saw pigs, and they got out to pursue them, and Haroon appeared over the hill in his Hilux and went, "Hey guys, how you going?" And they went, oh, "Thanks, mate." And the pigs ran off. No lie. I was driving the next day, and I came over the hill, and I saw the pigs, and went, "Oh, pigs!" And Haroon then came over the hill, and went, "Oh, hi, Mark, how you going?" I went, "Yeah, mate." Okay, that's twice.
I'm sure.
Twice
I'm sure.
in a row. So
Sure, he's gonna love listening to this.
As I kind of thought, what's he protecting those pigs? Is he like,
chase you off them?
So yeah, so I kind of, and I mean, when you've hunted Nundle, and the motorbike riders go through and stuff like that, they'll come screaming through on the dirt bikes, and you go, okay, well, we'll just stay away from there. So
yeah, sure. And like we've said more than once, we go to this forest to get as far away from other people as we possibly can in pursuit of what we're doing. We're not really hanging around where the other people are anyway, but every now and then you do stumble across an area where somebody else is that you wanted to go. And I confess that a couple of years ago I got to a spot that I had fully intended to hunt, and there was a car there, and I just carried on my hunt. I went straight into the same area, but it's a big area. The wind was in the favour of quite a bit of direction. I felt the location that I was going was my secret spot, so there's no way he would have known about it anyway. So we're going to different spots, and he would have been somewhere in there. But I've just got to be careful, and I never came across the fella, so who knows?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. You just got to be careful. I mean, that's why you wear blaze, and that's why you follow safe shooting procedures and all that kind of things. It's bound to happen. You are going to get crossover.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's and in fact, that was a question that was put to me on this group. How far how close can you shoot to a fence? So is it 200 meters, 100 meters?
To a neighbour's fence?
To a boundary fence. Yeah. So public land, private land, boundary fence. There isn't a distance.
No,
because it's about safe shooting. So there isn't a distance.
You can be leaning against that fence, shooting back into the park.
Yeah, as long as the bullet's not crossing.
That's right. If that bullet has the ability to cross that fence line, then that's not a safe activity. So it doesn't matter if it's 100 yards or 200 yards or whatever it is. If it comes back to safety. So you could be standing on that fence and shooting horizontal or parallel to that fence and shoot a deer. But the question is, then you've got to ask yourself, what happens if that deer crosses the fence? So yes, you're legally allowed to be standing against that fence and shooting, but you've got to give consideration to the projectile and to the game animal and what will happen. So if you shoot that so if that animal is running to that fence, for instance, and you shoot it but on public land and it jumps over that fence, then that's, you don't have the right to pursue it.
No.
So you've then basically shot an animal in arguably an unethical manner because you haven't been able to dispatch it within a safe place. Conversely, if you're sitting on a fence and you see the animals come out of the private and jump over the public, you're allowed to shoot them then. Then,
Sure.
if it's safe and there's no issue about them, crossing over or losing the game animal. So it comes down to a matter of safety and your confidence or otherwise about what that game animal might do.
Here's a question that comes up from time to time, and it's a pretty easy answer, but we'll call it out anyway. What do you do to dispose with your carcass waste? How do you dispose of the carcass waste?
I put him in John's sleeping bag when he's not looking.
Yeah, it comes up a lot with new people. I know people that have carted it out.
So we talk like the gut pile, basically.
I'm talking about whatever you don't put in your rescue.
Yeah, whatever you don't. So whatever you leave behind.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I try not to leave it near water, which can be arguably quite difficult if you're up on high because stuff runs downhill. So try not to leave it near water. Try not to leave it near a track or a travelled road. I know there's certain tracks that are not gazetted.
Enough roadkill, don't need any more.
Yeah, that's it. So not on a road, not near water, and I always split the gut bag.
Yeah, and for what purpose?
So it breaks down quicker, and other animals come and eat it quicker and stuff like that. So yeah, that's all I do. And that's probably unnecessary. But that's what I do. I'll split the gut bag and I'll just split it with a stick or something. I'll just basically poke a hole in it.
Oh, you can just poke a hole in it with your knife as well. It's
No, I don't want to stick a knife in the gut bag, so I just make a hole in it and that's it.
Yeah.
Because often when you're hunting state forests, I might not take the whole animal. I might just take quarters and back straps, so the gut bag, and so the gut bag might still be in the animal, or it might not be, depending on the circumstances of what's happening and stuff like that. But so if I do where I just take the quarters off and I haven't gutted it, I will still split the gut open and spill the guts on the ground and stick a stick in it and make a hole, because it just seems to, it helps other things eat it quickly, and they do. Yeah. They eat them very quickly.
Absolutely okay to leave the remains in the forest.
Yeah, it's going to get eaten.
Out of sight, away from the track.
Away from water.
Yeah.
Away from water.
That's it. I think water's the one I try to move stuff away from, and which is interesting because if you hunt pilliga, often you actually end up shooting near water.
Yeah.
So then when you do that, you have to give some consideration of where you are to the water, because you might not be in water, but you might be in a runoff into water. So, you might be in a gully that drains into that water. So then the first bit of downpour, that's going to wash into there. Or so I try to make sure that it's not in a water course or in a way that it's going to end up in the water. That's all.
Cool. Any other ethical questions for public land?
Any other ethical questions?
There'll be a few that come out of this podcast.
Yeah. Throw them up.
Can't think of any.
We'll answer them as best we can.
There was a couple of posts from Robert Borzak that kind of tricked my interest, and I thought, let's drive those on.
Yeah, that's good. All right.
I'm done.
I'm done.
Cool. We'll end it there then.
Okay.
All right. Call it a night. Thanks,
There we
fellas.
go.
Good chat.
Thanks, Jess.
Righto.
Okay.